October 1962. The world teetered on the brink of annihilation. In the midst of the Cuban Missile Crisis, tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union reached a boiling point. With nuclear weapons ready to launch, one man, a relatively unknown Soviet officer, made a choice that prevented global catastrophe. This is the extraordinary story of Vasili Arkhipov, the man who single-handedly stopped World War III. Without his decision, you wouldn't be watching this video, and the world as we know it might not exist. So, what exactly happened on October 27, 1962? And why has this pivotal moment remained hidden for so long? Let's dive in. The Cuban Missile Crisis, a precarious beginning. To understand Arkhipov's pivotal role, we first need to explore the backdrop of the Cuban Missile Crisis. It began in 1959 when Fidel Castro's communist revolution turned Cuba into the first socialist state in the Western Hemisphere. For the United States, Cuba's proximity, just 90 miles from Florida, made it an immediate security concern. Over the next few years, U.S. efforts to overthrow Castro, including the infamous Bay of Pigs invasion, failed spectacularly. This drove Cuba closer to the Soviet Union, and by 1962, the Soviets had devised a bold plan. Secretly deploy nuclear missiles to Cuba to counterbalance U.S. missile installations in Turkey. Establish a direct nuclear threat to the U.S. mainland, leveling the playing field in the Cold War arms race. In September 1962, Soviet ships began transporting nuclear weapons to Cuba. By October 14, U.S. spy planes discovered the missile sites under construction. For the first time in history, America faced the chilling prospect of total destruction by an external enemy. Show visuals of missile sites in Cuba, Kennedy addressing the nation. Narrator. President John F. Kennedy immediately convened his advisors. What unfolded next was a series of decisions that would bring humanity closer to nuclear war than ever before. Kennedy faced 6 options. Do nothing. Rely on diplomacy. Threaten military action. Blockade Cuba to prevent further shipments. Conduct airstrikes to destroy the missile sites. Launch a full-scale invasion of Cuba. While many military advisors pushed for an invasion, Kennedy opted for a naval blockade. It was a gamble, a middle ground that avoided direct conflict while applying pressure on the Soviets. But the decision was only the beginning of the crisis. The submarine that could have started WWI. As the U.S. Navy enforced the blockade, tensions rose rapidly. On October 27, 1962, a day now known as Black Saturday, events took a dark turn. The U.S. Navy detected a Soviet submarine, B-59, near Cuba. Believing the sub might be carrying nuclear weapons, American forces began dropping practice depth charges to force it to surface. But there was one critical problem. The crew of B-59 had been out of contact with Moscow for days. Trapped in the oppressive heat of their submarine, with oxygen running low and U.S. explosions shaking their vessel, the crew believed that World War III had already begun. On board B-59 was a nuclear torpedo, powerful enough to destroy a U.S. aircraft carrier and ignite an all-out war. To launch the weapon, 2 key officers needed to agree: the captain, Valentin Savitsky, and the political officer. Both men, convinced they were under attack, were ready to fire. But a third man was on board that day, Vasili Arkhipov. His presence was a fluke of Soviet naval protocol. Normally, only 2 officers were required to authorize a nuclear strike, but Arkhipov's senior rank meant his vote was necessary. When the captain declared, "We're going to blast them now. We will die, but we will sink them all," it was Arkhipov who stood firm and said, "No." Arkhipov's logic, a hero's calm under pressure. Why did Arkhipov hesitate when others were ready to act? To understand his mindset, we need to look at his past. Earlier that year, Arkhipov served aboard a Soviet submarine, Cabe-19, which suffered a catastrophic nuclear reactor leak. The incident exposed the crew to lethal radiation, killing many of his comrades. Arkhipov witnessed the devastating effects of nuclear power firsthand, a trauma that shaped his understanding of its risks. In the heat and chaos of B-59, Arkhipov remained level-headed. While his colleagues interpreted the U.S. depth charges as an attack, Arkhipov saw them as a warning, a signal to surface and avoid escalation. His reasoning was simple but profound. Without clear communication from Moscow, launching a nuclear weapon would be reckless and catastrophic. The day humanity survived. Against immense pressure, Arkhipov convinced the captain to surface the submarine rather than fire the nuclear torpedo. When B-59 emerged, the crisis de-escalated. Back on land, negotiations between Kennedy and Khrushchev reached a breakthrough. The Soviets agreed to remove their missiles from Cuba in exchange for a U.S. pledge not to invade and the eventual removal of U.S. missiles from Turkey. The legacy of Vasili Arkhipov. Despite his monumental decision, Arkhipov remained an unsung hero for decades. The truth about his role only emerged in 2002, when Soviet documents were declassified. Thomas Blanton, director of the National Security Archive, famously said, "This guy saved the world." Arkhipov lived a quiet life after the crisis, passing away in 1998 from kidney cancer, likely caused by radiation exposure during the K-19 incident. He never sought recognition for his actions, but his story stands as a testament to the power of individual courage. Why this story matters today. The story of Vasili Arkhipov is a reminder of the razor-thin margins that separate peace from destruction. It's a testament to the importance of calm, critical thinking in moments of crisis. At a time when global tensions remain high, Arkhipov's legacy is more relevant than ever. His decision underscores the human cost of war and the vital role individuals play in shaping history. If this story moved you as much as it did us, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to @CryptoStoic Insights for more untold stories that have shaped the world. Let's make sure the bravery of heroes like Vasili Arkhipov isn't forgotten. October 27, 1962, could have been the day humanity ended. Instead, it became the day one man's courage saved billions of lives. Vasili Arkhipov's story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, one voice, one decision, can change the course of history. Let's honor his legacy by striving for peace and understanding in our own lives. This guy saved the world. Thomas Blanton.